Well, good morning, everyone. I hope you can hear me. My name is Douglas Gautier, and I'm the chair of the Association of Asia Pacific Art Centres, and it's a real pleasure to have you join us today. It's an important topic, and I think all of us are working pretty strongly in the education area. Our own centre here at the Adelaide Festival Centre, we have a very strong program. We deal with over 500 schools a year. We do a lot of outreach programs, and I know all of you are working in similar circumstances. And so it's very timely that our secretariat, and thank you, Rochelle, and thank you, Jacqueline, have organised this session with a distinguished panel of speakers and moderated by Kenneth Kwok, who is the CEO of the Singapore Symphony Group, and somebody who has really had a distinguished track record, not only in the arts, but importantly in education right throughout his career, starting as a teacher, all the way through his work at the National Arts Council and also at the within government, within the Heritage Ministry. So, and now, of course, with that very great music group, the Singapore Symphony Group. So I'll let him introduce the panel, all of whom have some really interesting things to say about education and the arts. Two things I'd say is, and we'll talk about it a little bit at the end, and that is for our conference in Brisbane, our annual conference. Last year was in Singapore, this year in Brisbane. It's in September. The early bird registrations are still open. We're taking a lot of registrations from across Asia Pacific. So please, think about coming down and joining us in that city, which is a terrific city. It's going to host the Olympics in a few years' time. But the art scene is really very vibrant. And I know that our hosts at the Queensland Performing Arts Centre and, of course, AAPPAC and all the members will be very happy to welcome you and see you there and talk more about sharing, what we do together. And then finally, right at the end, we're just going to talk a little bit about the AFC, Adelaide Festival Centre. It's part of our 50th anniversary. We are offering two programs, two places fully funded with airfares and accommodation, all the rest of it, to a leadership intensive program, which we're conducting in association with one of the best creative arts universities down here in Australia. So more about that towards the end. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to our very distinguished moderator, Kenneth Kwok. Kenneth, all yours.
Thank you so much, Douglas. Kenneth here, very kind words, thank you. So I'm Kenneth, the CEO of the Singapore Symphony, and I will be your moderator for this morning. As Douglas mentioned, I started my career as a secondary school teacher over 20 years ago. So the topic of arts education is something that's very, very close to my heart. Very simply, for me, a bit of a cliche, education is really about the mind, the heart, the hand, right? The arts have the power to activate all three. They influence the way we think, we feel, we do. The arts influence what we believe, how we respond to the world around us, and what actions we will take to engage with that world. And this is very important because the world is constantly changing and even more so, even more quickly than before. So the question for us really is, what does that mean for arts educators and the arts institutions that are working in this field? This morning, we have three wonderful speakers to share their thoughts with us, to activate our imaginations, to ask questions, and to suggest possibilities. We will begin with each speaker introducing themselves and their work for about 5 minutes each, and then we'll have a short panel discussion before opening up to a Q&A. Without further ado, I think let's get started. So let's begin with Damien, who is the General Manager of Monash University's Performing Arts Centres. Over to you, Damien.
Thanks very much, Kenneth, and good morning, everyone. I speak to you from Naarm in Australia, in Melbourne, from a very windy Melbourne, in fact, very, very windy indeed. I hope my building stays up at the moment. I'd like to speak to you about Monash University and what role arts education plays in the tertiary sector on university campuses. Next slide. Firstly, can I say that Monash University recognises that its Australian campuses are located on the unceded lands of the people of the Kulin Nations and pays its respects to their elders past and present. Next slide. So a little bit about Monash University. Monash is a global university with a 60-year legacy of questioning, challenging and driving impact. We've built a reputation for excellence in research, education and enterprise, with an international reach and a global and inclusive perspective. We have a commitment to creativity, innovation, and making a difference that truly sets us apart. And we are focused on empowering our people to make positive and lasting change. So just to give you a bit of perspective in Melbourne, at least, where Monash is and what we do, it was established just in 1958, so relatively young. And back then, just 347 students commenced in 1961. Next slide. And now today, you can see our global footprint, not just in Australia, in our Victorian campuses, but across the world. We have 8 campuses across 5 countries, 2 campus partnerships, more than 100 partner universities, and nearly 85,000 students across our campuses, which makes us the largest university in Australia, and some 18,000 staff across all of our campuses. And with that, of course, which is very, very important to the university, a very large alumni community of over 466,000 across 169 countries. And I'm not sure how detailed this slide you can see, but we do have key campuses in the southeast of Asia, in Jakarta, in Kuala Lumpur, of course. There's been our flagship campus in Suzhou in China, and then of course across in Mumbai as well. Next slide. So a bit about Monash University Performing Arts Centres. So we present a diverse program of events that seek to challenge, inspire and connect audiences through extraordinary live experiences. We are wholly owned by Monash University, which is a really unique position for us in Australia, and I'm not sure how other universities in this network operate, but we are a performing arts centre that is not owned by any local government or state government body. We have 5 performing arts venues across 2 campuses for commercial hire, and we bring in 250,000 non-student visitors to our campus. So at our Clayton campus, which is the size of about a Melbourne suburb, we are really the shop front for the university, because what we do in a way does not directly relate to the business of running a university, which is teaching tertiary students. We also are unique because of our investment in emerging technologies such as active acoustic systems, performance, education and research. And we also have a great, very high commitment to commissioning of new Australian works. So just to give you a bit of perspective as to who we are and where we are in the city, in 1965, the university seized the future of arts education on and around our flagship campus by building a professional proscenium arch theatre, which opened in 1968, and a 1,600-seat concert hall, which opened in 1971. Next slide. So I just want to give you a quick outline of how do we, as a performing our symphony orchestra, our student orchestra, which is open to all Monash students. So if you're doing a medical degree, you can still come and play in our orchestra. We have sold out concerts right across the year, and that engages both our students and also our local communities. And the other thing that we drive is our education partnerships with major festivals for our own students, which is with the wonderful Melbourne Fringe Festival and the Melbourne International Jazz Festival. Next slide. And so as what I would like to just briefly speak about is around, arts education and our local community. We are 20 minutes from the centre of the CBD of Melbourne, and we have a very unique place where we are with our fantastic world-class venues located in Australia's largest university, but in a major metropolitan city. So our Monash's strategic goal of inclusivity supports AAPPAC's programming and what we do and our access to the arts and arts education. Our Family Fiesta children's program brings young people, families and performers right into our venues at a very early age. Our primary and secondary schools, as Douglas mentioned, are a very, very important part of what we do. Our local dance and music schools use our venues annually. They have a touch point on our campus, which are, of course, potential Monash students in the future. And then another partnership, which is very important, is Indian Performing Arts Centre Convention, which is a celebration of creativity. And of course, a fantastic partnerships with colleagues in Singapore, with dancers from India, Singapore and Australia. So I'll just show you one photo here, which gives an example of what we do, how great, the interaction is that many of you will know Australian jazz legend Vince Jones. This is our venue, The Counts, our live music venue, which opened just a few years ago. And here we are, Monash students performing with one of the great jazz legends in a show, sold out show in our club just recently. So we have a very unique situation in performing arts centres and education, I think, in Australia. And next slide. Thanks, Jack. I'll be looking forward to the conversation. Thank you. Thanks, Kenneth.
Thank you so much, Damien, because I think it's very important that we have a sense of the work that you're doing. So thanks for laying out that context. And for those of you who want to find out more about our speakers, you can also check out the marketing collaterals for the event. We move on now, thank you, Damien, to Raymond. And Raymond is the Deputy General Manager of the National Kaohsiung Centre for the Arts. Over to you, Raymond. Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning. Very nice to meet you guys online. So I would like to present you our approach as a performing arts venue, how we run our arts education program, or the other words is learning and participation. So my background is managing director of a contemporary dance company in Hong Kong, and I moved to Taiwan 2.5 years ago to run this one of the Asian's largest venue in it's really a challenging task, but indeed what we are trying to do is to enhance the literacy and also to make arts as part of the life in the south of Taiwan. So the venue is situated in Kaohsiung in south of Taiwan. This is really huge venue, so you can see from the pictures one by one, just give you an image. So what we're trying to do is to promote arts in a venue, so that the venue is not just a space for performances, but it's also a public space for everybody who can enjoy leisure time here as one of the sightseeing spots and also a learning space as well. So we can see our facilities, the concert hall, playhouse, which has enabled us to make more programs feasible, not only for international programs, but the local programs. So our target audience would not just be the local audience, but also international audiences. So we can see all our public space are fully used for the learning participation programs. That means we could offer more possibilities for people to access to the arts and culture. So our strategy is indeed to make the venues more easier accessible for everyone, to enhance the emotional attachment of the people in Kaohsiung, particularly that Wai U Ying as venue, they could be not just for performances, it's the home for creativity. So we can go for next slide, please. So our approach to the learning participation, it could be, of course, as a space for the audience to enjoy and to know more about what the artists are doing, particularly the art form, and also they could all express themselves through the arts participation. So of course, from this perspective, what we are having, of course, we offer opportunities for them to access to the arts, not just performances, but the workshops and participation. But at the same time, Wei Wu-ying as an identity to quite a lot of arts audiences and also general public in Taiwan. And they would see Wei Wu-ying is something different. It should be more than just a performing venue. And at the same time, we promote equal cultural rights, not only just for the accessibility for different people in need, but it's also actually we also increase the opportunities to the people, particularly in rural areas, to enjoy world-class performing arts activities. So that quite a lot of programs we would enjoy, let our audiences in the rural areas enjoy and to come to see the shows. And of course, the learning resources that we are trying to enhance and to build is our teaching artists that could offer literacy programs to the general public who are interested in knowing what the arts forms are. But at the same time, they could be our audience, they could be our students learning the particular art form. So connect, of course, the artists and audiences. That is one of our missions, quite important missions. So next slide, please. Okay, so these are one of the highlights that I try to go through some of the important initiatives that we are. So next slide, please. So all our programs, indeed, we tie into our venue space. So that you can see from these programs, so we do once per month, is that the public classes that allow general public to come and to enjoy a sense of dance. So you can see the gentlemen, they enjoy the ballet exercises. That is really fantastic. And of course, for those people who haven't been in touch with all these art forms, this is the starting point. And at the same time, we promote them with different programs. So next slide, please. And also the headphone cinema. We show all the documentaries and music-related programs, documentaries, and even concerts broadcast live stream, so that people even during the pandemic, they could access to the world-class performances and also know more about the behind the scenes through the film screening audience of the documentaries. Next slide, please. So the part organ appreciation. So we welcome students to come to our state-of-the-art concert hall to enjoy more activities, knowing our organs. So this is one of our key programs that we host once per month. And then we welcome the public and also school to join. Next slide, please. The opera, the participation part, that means we try to recruit audiences, the amateur opera singers, they could enroll and to sign up for the opportunities to perform on stage. So this is a kind of participation. The stage, they own the stage on the day of the our celebration of the venue, the birthday of the venue on the 10th of October. Next slide, please. Okay, to the students, so we reach out to schools to have the play reading. They expect play reading workshops to the students who are interested in drama productions or to express themselves. So our approach is not just to make them being an actor, but they should know to be more confident and they to learn the content, even the literature through the scripts that they are reading. So we start from 2020, and then we have more than 1,500 students enjoy this program. So we are expanding this program so that this is one of the outreach programs to schools, having experience to giving all students experience to enjoy and to participate in the drama and play reading. So next slide, please. So behind the scene, this is a very well acclaimed programs to watch, to see, to access to our backstage. Next slide. And also another outreach programs. So we have dances choreographed by Cho Su-yi, our resident artist, to the rural area of the Kaohsiung city. So they they actually reach out to our audiences and to introduce right wing as a cultural venue. Next slide. Thank you. So this is really brief introductions. So in terms of our, indeed, we try to, because our venue is really young venue, it's just established 5 years. So we try to have this branding as the learning space and a space of creativity, so that people could to be more open to enjoy the performing arts. And at the same time, we break through the boundaries between artists and the audience, so that, or even audience, they could be part of our artists, so-called. So that we have public piano and also the amateur programs that the people to enjoy, and we share our venue to them. So that's a brief introductions to what we are doing in terms of learning participation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Raymond. Kenneth here again. It's always wonderful to hear insights to what's going on in a different space, in a different country, because I think for us, when we see similar programs, it affirms that we're on the right track. And then there are always new programs that are being done elsewhere that give us new ideas. So thank you very much, Raymond. And now we move to Singapore with Kai, who is the General Manager of a theatre company in Singapore, Theatre Ikamatra. Over to you, Kai.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. My name is Kai, and I'm the General Manager of Theatre Ikamatra. We are an ethnic minority company in Singapore, and what we do is we produce new works and adaptations, as well as run development programs. So through this effort, we hope to spotlight ethnic minority stories and support ethnic minority individuals in our programs and productions that represents and inspires. I know there are many definitions of arts education, and it really depends on the country, organization, and community that we work with, as we've heard from Raymond and Damien. However, for us at Theatre Ikamatra, as a small theatre company, very simply, how we define arts education is as utilizing the arts as a tool for learning and introducing the arts to our community. Next slide, please. So in the past, we've had a very strong hold over the arts education community, where we offered various arts programs. We constantly produce assembly and library shows, which were very popular amongst the primary school age group. Under the arts education program initiatives in the past, we also offer arts programs like drama and curriculum, assembly shows that targeted the secondary school group. We also had a very strong relationship with tertiaries that allowed us to conduct an annual inter-tertiary competition called Pesta Peti Putih, which was really successful given that it served as the starting point for many of our local artists today. So through these past initiatives, you can see that we were very present in the various learning milestones of a Singaporean child and student, which was very vital in nurturing their love and appreciation for the arts. However, over the years, due to budget constraints and a general lack of ethnic minority theatre practitioners who are well-versed in working with the youth, the young people, we focused a bit more on art making, and we lost our touch with arts education. However, now we have our vested interest in reclaiming our stake and presence in arts education, and we are primarily doing it through these initiatives. So firstly, we are working together with Singapore's Ministry of Education Arts Education Branch to produce a learning resource meant to supplement the learning for O-level drama students. So this learning resource is focused on learning about our traditional art forms and how we have contemporized these art forms in our recent musical offering, a cultural adaptation of Midsummer Night's Dream called Bangsawan Gemala Malam. We are also in our planning stages of producing works that are adaptations of books in the Ministry of Education's Primary 6 syllabus, meant to target children ages 7 and up to re-nurture our relationship again with that age group. And also through our development programs, such as creating Malay theatre for young audiences, we focus on capability development of theatre makers so that there is a focus on our immediate artistic community for arts education and not just our audience. Next slide, please. So the reason why we see value in reigniting our stake and relationship with arts education institutions is we hope that through these initiatives, we can provide pipelines for future supporters, patrons, and advocates by building positive experiences between young children and our company during their formative years, so that they can remain loyal supporters for years to come. The themes that we explore in our theatrical productions are also themes that we believe is important for our young audiences, and we believe in reaching them at their tender age despite the socio-political nature of our themes. We also want to be visible and present again in all of their milestones in life to concretize our relationship with them and also the arts. Most importantly, we also want to plant the seed for future artists for the longevity and sustainability in the arts, especially for the ethnic minority community, so that our stories will continue to be represented and told on stage. Yeah. So that's all from me. Thank you so much. I look forward for the Q&A session.
Thanks so much, Kai. So Kenneth here again. Thank you to all our three speakers for sharing the work that you are doing. We're going to open up now for questions. So may I invite participants, if you have any questions that you'd like to raise, you can type them in the chat function, or you can use the raise the hand function, and we'll get round to as many as we can before the time. But while waiting for these questions to come in, I'll use my moderator's privilege to ask the first question. Something that Kai said that really struck me was the idea of a shift that you had to make over the years. And I think that's something that we were talking about, myself and the speakers in our prep discussion, because things are changing so fast. So I'm curious to know from all three of you, what are some of the shifts that you see in the education landscape, in the arts landscape, that you feel you've had to, respond to? Because I think all three of you represent different institutions, different companies, different groups. And so for a company to respond, to shifts can be a bit challenging. So what are some of the shifts and the challenges that you have faced as time has evolved over the years? Yeah, not necessarily just the pandemic, although that, of course, is a very big one. But yeah, any of the speakers would like to respond to that?
Maybe I can respond first.
Maybe Kai and then Damien. Thanks.
Sure. So in the past, I feel like as a young person, we were always told what to think and feel about social-political issues such as social justice, climate change, and all forms of inequalities. So I would listen to what people around me had to say, and then I thought that was what should shape my opinion. However, I think in this day and age of data, young people are able to access all sorts of information at a much younger age. And I believe like companies like us need to think about how we can start the conversation earlier. And it's not just about telling them how we think or what to think, but rather involving them in the discourse. Because because with social media, younger people are already accessing information. So it's absolutely necessary for us to think outside of the box, how we can include this group in our programming and shift our programming to include their thoughts in the program. So for example, one of the programs that we produced was Call to Action. So it's a digital project that got used to talk about issues that are political in nature through online and digital means, because we realized that our youth of today have progressed much further than us in terms of talking about political issues like this.
Thanks, Kai. Damien?
Look, from our perspective in the university sector, so first of all, can I say that I think everyone may, well, if you're not aware, that Melbourne was in fact the most locked down city in the world. That had a really dramatic effect on lots of things, including our arts education programs. But a couple of things have shifted post-COVID, if I may mention it. One is we are busier than ever. So our occupancy of our venue highs and our demand for arts education has increased exponentially. That's a good problem to have, but it's also a difficult problem because we've now had to prioritise actually who we can hire to, what can we actually do with the team that we have. So that is, of course, an interesting one. The other one, of course, is in the tertiary sector, the switch from us at Monash and all universities to online learning, there has been a very slow shift back to campus, if you like. And this has knock-on effects for a whole range of things, including running a performing arts centre, where our student numbers, in a way, are down because students are used to learning online or in a hybrid sense. So these are challenges that we're still working through at the moment, but certainly our arts education programs are of top priority, because if we don't prioritise those and just run business as usual, running an arts centre and hiring, that we will fall behind. So that's a perspective certainly from the tertiary sector here in Australia.
Thank you so much, Damien. Raymond, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I think after the COVID, people tends to have a variety of choices. So why they choose arts as the choice, one of the choices? I mean, this is also can be seen by the late ticket sales that people come very late to get the tickets, and also people come to our venues not looking just for attending performances, but they are eager to learn and to know something. And so this is the reasons that why we articulate with this by offering a different variety of programs in public space, so that people feel casual to make arts a part of their life, instead of just telling them what they should know this is a really high art form, and that should be different in terms of the way of communicating with audiences and students.
Yeah, thank you, Raymond. I think the idea of variety is very important, certainly for us as well at the Singapore Symphony. I think Damien talked about, people being more open to digital and online programs. At the same time, we also have people who are now looking for something very live and very real and experiential, right? So that openness to a variety of programs, I think it's something that I see more energy for post-COVID. Kai, do you want to respond to this specific question about post-COVID? Because I see in the chat that Shirley, one of the participants, has asked specifically about post-COVID. Has there been any changes for you, Kai, in terms of theatre?
Yeah, for sure. I think pre-COVID, we always thought about our art education, our programs in terms of physical projects or programs. But post-COVID, we always think that, okay, we can't take this physical space for granted, especially because now we recently gave up our own studio as well. So now we always think about, okay, how can we offer a digital or an online version of this project so it can also reach more audiences, not just in Singapore, but also our regional counterpart. And also like what Raymond mentioned about variety, it's also just to give variety to different learners as well, because some people prefer online methods, not physical workshops. Yeah, so that's how we shifted thinking about our offerings.
Thank you, Kai. I don't see any additional questions or raised hands. Maybe I'll just give a 3-second pause here in case anyone does want to throw in a question or raised hand. Okay, we have a question from Debbie. Or maybe, okay, I think the COVID year saw the shift of many education programs into the online sphere. And personally, I think it's great. Thanks, Debbie, for affirming that, because it makes things accessible to a wider audience. But sometimes I think the lack of live engagement and face-to-face interaction means participants feel more passive and it's easier to tune out. Any best practices to share on how to run online programs better? A very good question. Yeah, any of our panel would like to respond to this, how to make online programs even more engaging?
I actually have a funny story about this, if I can share. So for one of our online projects where it was a collaboration between Singaporean youths as well as Scotland youths, we primarily use Zoom, but I wanted to change things up because Zoom is because they use Zoom in their classroom, so it might get a bit boring for them. So I wanted to change things up, and I found this online platform called GatherTown, which used like Habbo Hotel, if we're all familiar with it, Habbo Hotel graphics. So for me, it was really nostalgic because it was it looked like an old game, and I thought it was really cool because you could really form your avatar. So our youths could form their online version of themselves, and you could operate it, and they could meet in a virtual meeting room. So I thought it was really cool, and I introduced it to our young participants, and they really had difficulty using this platform. And so they got back to me and said, actually, you know what, Kai, like this is not working for us. Like we're all on Discord, and I had no idea what Discord was, but they were like, we're friends on Discord. Can we use Discord instead? Like it's more engaging for us. I was like, then that was when I realized that, instead of dictating what I thought was cool for these young participants and what I thought would be engaging for them, I should have actually asked them, like, actually, what is a platform that you all would want to collaborate on? So from then on, it's instead of dictating, I asked them like, okay, do you want to use Discord? Do you want to use they even use Snapchat or Instagram, sharing things with them. Yeah, so I think I don't know if it's a best practice, but for us, it has worked so far to include them from the get-go, even down to what platforms they want to use.
And it goes back to your theme earlier that you mentioned, Kai, about wanting to engage with the young people and hearing from them as well, pulling the ideas out from them and not just making certain assumptions about. Yeah,
exactly.
Raymond or Damien, either of you want to add? I think, okay, both, maybe we'll start with Damien and then Raymond.
Well, Debbie, this doesn't help answer your question, but in fact, we made a strategic aim to stop our online arts programs because given our experience here in Melbourne, that we saw that a drop off in engagement, as you said, in online programs. So we did the reverse. We made them all attractive enough to come back in and engage with our centre and our art centre, what we have. So that was quite a strategic, deliberate decision. Doesn't mean that we won't offer it in the future, but we're very desperate, really, in Australia, in Melbourne, to get people back and young people back into our programs and our art centre.
Yeah, thank you, Damien. I think we're experiencing that as well. You know, we invested so much in these digital programs and platforms during the pandemic, and then once things opened up, everyone came to live, events, which is great. Those ticket sales have gone up, but then the number of people on our digital platforms really just declined so much. And so we're having to rethink as a company as well where we put our resources, because if there isn't that hunger and demand for online platforms, then how do we balance that out? Yeah, thanks. Raymond?
Yeah, just a quick note, because it's also quite a panic for us to how to make a good use of the materials that we made during pandemic. So one of our tasks right now, one of the initiatives right now is to establish an education resources website with all these resources consolidated on the website, so that it could be used as a supplementary information for audience who really wish to know about the art form. It's related to the documentaries and the programs that we made online, mainly recording, but we also have interactive gaming programs that could be in terms of programs, the software, so that they could enjoy online as an interactive. So I think this is really good for the students, particularly in rural areas, in remote area, so they have a kind of backgrounds before they come to our venue. So we try to complement each other. So this is also one of the ways that we can make good use of the online programs, and we can still work on the documentaries later.
Thank you.
So sustainable. Thank you.
Okay. I see another question from Christy. Can the panel provide any successful examples or share challenges of working in education, specifically in a multicultural context? Yeah. Anyone would like to get us started on that? Maybe I can start with Kai, if you don't mind, because I mean, you described Theatre Ekamatra as a minority theatre company. Yeah.
I think for us, the challenge is that, or one thing that we realize is that we always assume that just because we come from the same cultural group, the challenges that we face are the same, but everyone has different entry points into the challenges that we face. So one of the things that we always do is that we have a check-in at the start of the workshop to see where everyone is at. And also with these challenges, with the things that we want to bring to the classroom, not everyone is at the same comfort level to share. So with this check-in, and we identify and we also acknowledge each other's comfort level in terms of sharing in the workshop sessions. Yeah, so I think that one check-in technique has worked well for us. So they also acknowledge each other's presence and comfort level in sharing in that space. Yeah, I hope that answers your question, Christy.
So much, Kai. Damien or Raymond, either of you want to respond to that? Damien?
We just recently have, as I mentioned, the Indian Performing Arts Convention is now, is an established and wonderful program in Singapore, and we're very pleased that we've now come on board and delivering that convention in Australia with wonderful partners. That certainly has been already a great success here in Melbourne and across Australia. People are travelling to Melbourne for it. It has a very important part in our arts education program as well, and certainly brings a very important art form and into our centre. So the future is good for that, and certainly it's an example here in Australia how we can work with other partners and multicultural groups across the globe rather than just here in Australia.
You talked about partnership, Damien, and that's actually a theme I wanted to pick up on, the idea of partners. And how do you decide which partners to work with?
Well, we approach it from a tertiary perspective. So, again, there's a question here from Ken, which we might come to around what's the difference between a university or an art school or performing arts school that teaches performing arts degrees to tertiary students and an art centre. Well, we're both. And we might discuss that in a minute. But in terms of partnerships for us, the education partnerships are critical. Universities can, particularly in Australia, they can fund a range of things. And we're asked all the time to invest in these certain projects. But in these meetings that I have with them, the first question I ask is, you know, what is in it for our students? What are our students going to get out of this for the investment? And the one that I will mention, which has been going for nearly 16 years, is our partnership with the Melbourne International Jazz Festival. It's Australia's sort of leading jazz festival, and well established. And we have a unique partnership with them where our students perform with international artists that come to Melbourne. So they have workshops, a whole range of things. They're exclusive to our students, and it sets us apart from as a teaching tertiary education area, a university in Australia. So I guess the key thing for us in partnerships is around our students. We're not really interested in doing something that isn't in some way connected to the benefit of our students.
Thank you, Damien. Ken, do let me know through the chat whether you feel that Damien has addressed your question, which was the difference between an academy and performing arts centers and groups, which I think Damien did sort of address. Anything else you want to add onto that specific question, Damien?
Well, yeah, sure. I mean, I think, and certainly our experience in Australia, I've mentioned that we are a unique institution, which we are a professional performing arts centre owned by university. Now, of course, in the US, that is a model that is very, very well established. We're probably closer aligned to that than to other countries that are joining us today. Certainly in Australia, universities are linked to, or performing arts specialist universities are linked to performing arts centres in some way. But as I said, we have this direct link where, given the nature of what we do, you know, our students have, you know, this wonderful access to world-class venues. Doesn't mean that they don't use other performing arts centres in Melbourne. Of course they do, but that's where they start. And you know, look, it's a very, very important link. I mean, as I said, we are unique where we are, but you know, performing arts universities that teach this, and I'll use an example. Our colleagues at the University of Melbourne is a perfect example. They have some of the best performing arts courses in Australia, and of course they're closely aligned. For example, Melbourne Theatre Company is actually partially owned by the University of Melbourne. So there are very, very important synergies, and very important. It goes both ways. You know, it's important for universities and art schools to be linked with their local performing arts centres.
Thank you so much, Damien. There is a question from Adeline I want to get to, but before we go to Adeline, can I just open up to the panel? If any of you would like to respond to something that someone else has said, or one of the earlier questions. Okay, all right. If not, then we'll go to that question from Adeline. She thanks everyone for sharing the diverse approaches to education opportunities through the arts. Specifically, she's asking, might you be able to share on any insights or learnings when navigating difficult themes or topics with young people? So not to pick on you again, Kai, but I think this was something you did mention early on in your presentation. So I think if you don't mind, you could start us off. Yeah.
I think what we've learned again is what I've learned personally actually is that I think I admit that we are not an expert in dealing or conducting arts education programs for young people, and there have been people in the industry who've done it longer than we have. And one of the important things I feel is to form partnerships, and this goes back to the earlier topic about forming partnerships with this institute, with this arts practitioners, or even arts groups who've done it longer than we have, because they have the expertise in that. And the whole point is that how we can work together, exchange ideas with each other, because the whole point is not to compete with each other, but also to learn, and how can we as a collective industry offer the next generation, how can we engage them better together as one industry. So that's what I've learned, and how we've done that is that we've been quite active in seeking out other arts groups in the region as well as internationally, who have done arts programs with young people for a much longer time. What are the techniques that we can learn from them? And one of the ways that we are doing that is starting to pilot this program, a creative residency, where we do an exchange with them. Like, we go over there and learn from the techniques that they have in place, and they come here and see how they can use their techniques with our community. Yeah, so that's one of the ways that we are trying to do that. But on a very basic level, there are some techniques that we do, like for example, the check-in as well. The check-in, I think, is really important. I know I mentioned it before, but I think it really, really works to see what comfort level the young people are at, because you don't know where they are coming from, what they've experienced prior to coming for the session. So it just gets everyone on a base level to be open in the space.
Fantastic. Damien or Raymond, either of you want to jump on this? Don't feel you need to. Okay. All right. We come to another question. I'll just read it out. In my personal research into multi-organizational partnerships, there seems to be consistent issues in sustaining these partnership efforts, from funding agreements to agreeing on objectives to implementation approaches. Partnerships are not easy. I think we can all agree on that, but worth it, definitely worth it. So the question from this participant is, might the panel have tips for successful and sustained partnerships? Damien, anything to add on this? I see you've unmuted yourself. Yeah.
Sure. Look, I think I mentioned it before, but I mean, I'm not sure exactly from NAC Education, is that going to corporates or is it the other way? I'm not exactly sure what the partnership is, but certainly, as I mentioned before, from a university going out and partnering with either a festival or another organisation, there's no discussion before what is it that we're trying to achieve. What is the benefits of us being together? The discussion around the terms, any financial exchanges, etc., are secondary. And I think a mistake that's made perhaps is that there's a sum of money that's on the table, and how best can we use it? We perhaps have had that approach in my time here. It doesn't work, in my experience, that really those discussions around what's the partnership about, how are we both going to benefit? That can take a long time. And then how it's implemented, what the financial basis is, etc., is secondary in my experience.
So it goes back to the philosophy behind the partnership in the first place, the objective.
Exactly. Yeah. And not having to, that there is a local, an arts council or a funding body that says you need to use this money, go and use it, or similar things. The universities are not rich, as people might think they are. They have limited funding. They have to invest very wisely in partnerships. There's a lot of bureaucracy, as there is, I'm sure, with many other institutions. So it is a long process. But as I said, as you said, Kenneth, it's very important to understand why you're doing it. And if it's not working, then don't do it.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point, Tim. I think sometimes we also have to accept that some partnerships don't work out. You don't need every partnership to be sustained. Sometimes you kind of go into it, with the best intentions and the best optimism, but sometimes the partnership doesn't seem to be able to work long term, or it's something that maybe you take a break and you come back to a few years later. It doesn't always have to be sustained in a very immediate and regular way. Yeah. Either Kai or Raymond want to comment on that? Raymond, I see you've unmuted.
Perhaps I add a bit on how we communicate with sponsor is kind of funding as well. And so we set the objectives. Of course, we want to change the conditions, behavior, and also we want our students to be more equipped with some knowledge, for example. So when we communicate with sponsors, so we set the targets that we could reach in 2 or 3 years so that they could see the results. I think that is also good to know each other through the communications of philosophy. And one of our key issues to address to our sponsors is that we try not to nurture all these arts education or learning participation activities are not aiming at nurturing artists, what we normally call artists, but we want to nurture an audience, future youth, as part of the civic society that they have equipped with somehow literacy of the arts, to know different art form, and at least get to be interested in some of the programs. I think that's kind of communications is very important. We have 2 or 3 years partnership. I think it's also good to see the result. That is my experience to share.
Thank you so much, Raymond. Okay, we're actually at 10 minutes to 11. So we have time for maybe one last question. If anybody wants to raise their hand or type something in. Okay, if not, maybe Okay.
Actually, Kenneth, it's Douglas. I did ask you a question, and that is with the advent of the new Singapore University of the Arts, I wonder what possibilities do you see of cooperation and partnership between that new institution and the Singapore arts sector in general?
I can't speak. I don't know if anyone from the university is here. Is there anyone who would like to respond to this? Okay, if not, then maybe I'll just speak from the perspective of Singapore Symphony, and then I don't know whether Kai wants to speak from the theatre sector. I think for us it's a very exciting proposition because it I mean, definitely in terms of creating pipeline, in terms of strengthening the pipeline and creating opportunities for young people to have I do think with education, it's very important when we signal that progression. So for classical music, I mean, it's good because we have the Yong Siew Toh Conservatory of Music already in the National University of Singapore. But I think the University of Arts, a new setup, is a much broader ambit across different art forms. So I think the idea that, a young person can sort of see that path, there's a School of the Arts for the younger students, and there's LaSalle as a college offering, LaSalle and NAFA offering diploma programs, degree programs, and then the university. So I think that that's very important, right? So I think as an orchestra, we'd be very interested to work with university partners to see how we can help students young people through that line. But actually for me, the other thing is the messaging and the signaling of what it means to have a University of Arts in Singapore. What is the message that sends to parents, what that sends to young people, to employers, to policymakers, members of the public, foundations. So for me, that role as an ambassador, as an advocate for the arts, coming from the university, I think to me, that's probably one of the more exciting parts of it. Yeah, I don't know, Kai, if you have anything you want to add?
I mean, similarly, I can't speak on the university's behalf. But from AAPPAC, we've always seen like a healthy, steady stream of students coming from LaSalle and NAFA coming to us for arts opportunities. And now with both of them joining forces to form this University of the Arts, like we've seen more interest in being involved in our programming, and also downright to doing volunteer roles like front of house, just because I think they see the value in being part of the arts, not just as an artist, but also as a volunteer, as a patron, just to know, just because I think it's true what Kenneth mentioned about how it's a messaging to show that being in the arts is a viable career choice. And I think that there has been that shift that more people, I think I can speak on a perspective of an arts manager. I think in the past, a lot of arts managers, especially because I am a LaSalle alumni, so I graduated from LaSalle, and so a lot of my classmates graduating, then they will go on to like big organizations, or they might pivot completely and do marketing for like the corporate sector, for example. But now I think I see more graduates being in arts organizations, and yeah, I think that messaging to show that a career in the arts is viable is really, really important, and you can see that shift.
Thanks, Kai. I'm a LaSalle alumnus too. So. But yeah, so that's really about the ecosystem growing.
Yeah.
And what that means, to a member of the public, seeing that there's so much more support, so much more resources for the arts, the growth of the arts sector in Singapore. And I think that, hopefully gives everyone a lot more motivation and optimism. Okay, I'm mindful of time now. We are 5 minutes to 11, and I don't want to hold anyone back. But please join me. Online, I don't know if you want to clap function or type something in the chat, but I really want to say a very big thank you to our three wonderful speakers, Raymond, Damien, and Kai. So a round of live and virtual applause to say a very big thank you. And now I'll hand over to Christy from the Adelaide Festival Centre, who has a few words. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much, Kenneth, and I agree. Thank you very much to the panel. I would just like to have a couple of minutes of your time to do a little advertisement for a program that we're running here at the Adelaide Festival Centre. So we have teamed up for our 50th anniversary with Flinders University, next slide, thank you, to talk about arts leadership. We think it's important that we have a role in helping young arts leaders engage in their career early on and get some great guidance. So this program includes 5 sessions a day for 4 days. It's very intensive with expert leaders who'll talk about tips and tricks and great examples of what they know. But importantly, we're going to specifically talk about your own leadership style. Next slide, thank you. So it's a micro-credential with Flinders University, which means it is accredited, and I said there's expert leaders. We should hope there'll be a really strong network afterwards. 15 people will be chosen, and it's open to everywhere, but specifically, next slide, thanks. We want to encourage a couple of people to come from Asia, if not more, and we have 2 places funded generously by a donor for accommodation and flights from Asia. Next slide. It's on during AusAsia. So this is the process. It's really simple. It's a CV and a 400-word written piece that talks about really about leadership and about the arts, so that we can put it through a little matrix and decide on who might join us and get a great group of young leaders together. Obviously, a nomination letter if you're coming from an organisation that needs to let you go. Next slide, thank you. So I'm asking that those of you on this session today might encourage people, young leaders who you think would really benefit from coming to Adelaide, to apply. There's a website link, we'll send that round afterwards, and it closes on the 9th of September for October this year during AusAsia. Thank you.
Thanks, Christy, and thanks, Kenneth, and all the participants and today, and our panelists in particular. This is a really interesting topic, I think, and one where APAC clearly has the membership and the reach to share ideas across the region. And of course, it's not only with secondary schools and primary schools and infant schools, with students, being on the end of great cultural work, but it's also involving them as well as participants. And of course, then all of that moves to our relationship as a sector with the tertiary sector, and more. And I think you can hear from particularly what Kenneth and Damien had to say, that that relationship is one that is growing, and I think it's something that APAC could explore more widely, because our relationship with our tertiary colleagues in creative industries, creative arts, is a growing one right across our membership and right across the region. So thank you again to the panelists. I really appreciate your contribution, and Kenneth leading all of that, and everyone who participated today. I do want to thank the APAC Secretariat for putting this together. Jacqueline and Rochelle, thank you so much for that. And finally, from me, if you could consider, if you haven't already signed up for the APAC conference in Brisbane, it will be terrific. We've got a lot of people now attending. A lot of these subjects will be discussed down there, and particularly in relation to climate change and sustainability. There's some very good topics with very good speakers. So I do encourage you to attend if you can. And finally, again, just to reiterate what Christy had to say, there are 2 places for colleagues from around Asia to attend that leadership intensive later in the year, and we'd love to see you, love to have an application. Okay, that's it. So Jack and Rochelle, should I sign off at this stage? Good. Okay. Thanks everyone for coming. If you've got ideas for future conversations we can have, or how we can share information through APAC, we're always interested in having your views. So thanks for being with us here this morning. We look forward to seeing you again in the sessions that are coming up. And if you can make it to Brisbane, we'd be very happy to see you there. So thank you and goodbye for now.
Thanks, everyone.